Folktales TV, the home of timeless stories and hidden wisdom. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's dive into the story for today. Amma Johnson never believed life would drag her so low. At just 21 years old, she had already seen enough hardship to last a lifetime. Her father had died when she was a teenager, leaving her mother and younger siblings with nothing but debts. Amma dropped out of school to work, picking up whatever menial jobs she could find to feed her family. That was how she eventually ended up in the grand mansion of Daniel King, the powerful billionaire CEO of Bologna Foods. The mansion was like another world compared to her tiny home in Surulere. Glittering chandeliers, imported Italian furniture, marble floors that seemed to shine with their own light. It was a place Amma never imagined she would walk into, let alone live in as a maid. Every corner of the house spoke of wealth and privilege. But for Amma, the mansion was both a blessing and a curse. The other workers never let her forget that she was the poorest among them. Lydia, a maid who had been in the mansion longer than Amma, never missed a chance to mock her. "Look at the way you clean the floor, like you're scrubbing the village square," Lydia sneered one morning. "Don't you know where you are? This is Daniel King's mansion, not your father's compound." Amma kept her head down, refusing to answer. She had learned quickly that silence was her best weapon. Words only led to more trouble. Still, she dreamed. Even while washing dishes or polishing floors, Amma dreamed of a life beyond servitude. She dreamed of finishing her education, of taking care of her mother, of one day owning something she could proudly call hers. But she also knew life rarely gave such chances to girls like her. Daniel King was a man Amma had only seen from a distance. He was tall, handsome in a sharp, commanding way, always dressed in perfectly tailored suits that hugged his broad shoulders. His aura filled any room he entered. Everyone bowed their heads when he passed, and whispers followed him like shadows. To Amma, he was untouchable. A man like that would never notice a maid like her. Or so she thought. One fateful evening, everything changed. The mansion was hosting a private dinner for Bologna Foods board members. Amma and the other maids were busy carrying trays of champagne, refilling glasses, and serving expensive dishes none of them could afford even in their dreams. The atmosphere was stiff, full of forced laughter and polished smiles. Men in suits and women in glittering gowns filled the dining hall, all vying for Daniel King's attention. Amma kept to the background, serving quietly. Her eyes occasionally flickered to Daniel at the head of the table. He looked perfect as always, but there was something off about him that night. He was paler than usual, his jaw clenched, and every now and then he pressed a hand discreetly against his chest. Amma noticed it because she had a habit of watching people carefully. Survival had taught her that. Suddenly, in the middle of a toast, Daniel staggered. His wine glass slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor. A gasp filled the room as the mighty CEO collapsed forward, his head slamming against the edge of the table before he hit the ground. Panic erupted. Board members screamed, some stood frozen, others fumbled for their phones. But no one dared to touch him. Amma's heart pounded. Without thinking, she pushed through the crowd and dropped to her knees beside him. His lips were turning blue, his breathing shallow and erratic. She had seen something like this before, back in her neighborhood, when a boy nearly drowned in the river. Amma had been the one to help save him with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Her hands trembled. Could she do it again? This was not some boy. This was Daniel King, the billionaire whose life was worth more than anything she could imagine. But she couldn't just watch him die. "Move," she shouted, surprising even herself. "Give him air." The crowd parted in shock as Amma tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and pressed her lips against his. She breathed into him, her chest burning with desperation. She repeated it again and again, until suddenly Daniel coughed violently, his body jerking as air rushed back into his lungs. The entire hall froze. The billionaire had just been kissed by a maid. Coughing, gasping, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. His gaze locked on Amma, confusion and disbelief mixing in his expression. But there was also something else, something no one else noticed. A flicker of vulnerability. Phones clicked. Someone had taken pictures. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Amma pulled away, her face flushed with embarrassment, but relief washed over her. He was alive. That was all that mattered. Within minutes, security and private medics rushed in, whisking Daniel away to his private quarters. Amma was left kneeling on the marble floor, the center of a storm she could not yet see. The next morning, headlines exploded. Billionaire rescued by maid's kiss. Who is the mystery girl who saved Daniel King? The photographs were everywhere. Amma bent over Daniel, her lips pressed to his. It looked less like resuscitation and more like a scandalous kiss. By noon, Amma was summoned to Mrs. Thompson's office. The head housekeeper's face was tight with disapproval, though her eyes betrayed something softer. "Amma," she said sternly, "do you realize what you've done? You've embarrassed this household. You've embarrassed Mr. King." "I was only trying to save his life," Amma whispered. Mrs. Thompson sighed. "I know, but the world will not see it that way." Amma's stomach sank. Later that afternoon, she was called into Daniel King's private study. Her knees nearly buckled as she stepped inside. He was seated behind a massive desk, a bandage visible near his temple from the fall. His piercing eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the floor. "So," he said finally, his voice deep and commanding, "you're the maid who kissed me." Amma's cheeks burned. "I was trying to save my life." "Yes, I know." His lips curved into a faint smile. "You did well. Very well, actually." Amma blinked, startled. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Daniel leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Trouble finds me whether I want it or not. But tell me, Amma Johnson, why did you act when everyone else froze?" She swallowed. "Because I couldn't just watch you die, sir." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel chuckled. "Honest. I like that." Amma shifted uneasily. She wanted to leave, to escape the weight of his gaze. But he wasn't done. "You'll be working directly under Mrs. Thompson from now on," he said. "Closer to me. I don't want the girl who saved my life scrubbing floors in the back." Her mouth fell open. "Sir, I don't deserve." "You'll take it," he interrupted firmly. "Consider it my way of saying thank you." Amma left the study with her heart racing. The other staff eyed her with suspicion and envy. Lydia cornered her in the kitchen later, her voice dripping with venom. "Look at you, parading like a queen. Do you think saving his life makes you special? You're still just a maid." Amma ignored her, but deep inside, she wondered if Lydia was right. She didn't belong in Daniel King's world. And yet, fate had forced her into it. What Amma didn't know was that her act of courage had already begun to change everything. For Daniel, who had spent years surrounded by sycophants and gold diggers, her selflessness was a shock. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at him, not with greed, not with fear, but with genuine concern. And for others, like Victoria Allen, his ambitious ex-fiancée, and Richard Bellow, his scheming business partner, Amma's sudden rise was a threat. They would stop at nothing to push her back down. But Amma had survived poverty, humiliation, and hardship, and she was about to prove that even a poor maid could shake the walls of power. The scandal would not die down. For days, the media fed hungrily on the story of the billionaire saved by his maid's kiss. Journalists camped outside the gates of Daniel King's mansion, desperate for a glimpse of Amma. Social media exploded with arguments, some praising her bravery, others mocking her as a gold digger who had staged the entire thing. Inside the mansion, tension simmered. The staff whispered behind her back, and Lydia became even more vicious. She sneered every time Amma walked by, muttering loud enough for others to hear. "See how she's pretending to be innocent. She's enjoying the attention. She thinks she's better than the rest of us now." Amma kept her head down, focusing on her new tasks under Mrs. Thompson's supervision. Instead of cleaning floors, she now worked in closer proximity to Daniel, arranging his schedules, serving his meals, and occasionally carrying documents from his office. It was intimidating at first, but slowly she began to notice the man behind the title. Daniel King was not just the powerful CEO everyone feared. He was also a man who rarely smiled, who often stayed up late in his study with a glass of whiskey untouched at his side, who looked out of his window as if searching for something he had lost. One evening, as Amma placed files on his desk, she dared to ask, "Sir, do you ever rest?" Daniel glanced up, surprised. "Rest? In this world, rest is a luxury I can't afford." She hesitated. Even the strongest man needs to sleep. For a moment, his eyes softened. Then he chuckled. "You're bold, Amma. Most people don't speak to me that way." Amma flushed, unsure if she had overstepped. But Daniel only returned to his work, and from that night he began asking her small questions about her life, where she was from, what her family was like. She answered cautiously, never giving too much away, but enough for him to see her sincerity. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, Victoria Allen was furious. The elegant, sharp-tongued woman had once been Daniel's fiancée, but he had broken off the engagement months before. Still, she considered him hers. Now, the news of a maid stealing the spotlight enraged her. She thinks she can win him with one kiss? Victoria hissed to herself as she sipped wine in her luxurious apartment in Ikoyi. "I'll show her what happens when a nobody crosses me." She dialed her phone. "Richard, we need to talk." Richard Bello, Daniel's business partner, was equally displeased. He had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to undermine Daniel and gain more control over Bologna Foods. Amma's sudden presence in Daniel's life was an unexpected complication. The more Daniel trusted her, the less power Richard had. Meeting with Victoria in a private lounge, Richard smirked. "So, the great Victoria Allen has been replaced by a maid. How humiliating." "Watch your mouth," she snapped. "I haven't been replaced. This is just a distraction. But if we play this right, we can use her to destroy him." Richard leaned forward. "I'm listening." Back at the mansion, Amma's life became even more complicated. One afternoon, while carrying documents to Daniel's office, she accidentally overheard a heated argument between him and Richard. "You're making reckless decisions, Daniel," Richard barked. "Bringing that maid into your inner circle? What will the shareholders think?" Daniel's voice was cold. "What I do in my house is none of their concern." "She's a distraction," Richard spat. "You're letting your guard down." "I trust her more than I trust you," Daniel shot back. Amma's heart pounded. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but Richard's words cut deep. Was she really a distraction? That evening, when Daniel called her into his study, she couldn't hold back. "Sir, am I causing you trouble?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked at her for a long moment before standing and walking closer. He was tall, and standing so near made her pulse race. You saved my life, Amma. The rest of them only care about my money. You cared whether I lived or died. His voice had softened, and for a moment, it felt dangerously intimate. Amma looked away, her cheeks burning. I only did what anyone would have done. No, he said firmly. Not anyone. Only you. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Amma felt something stir inside her that terrified her more than anything Lydia or the tabloids could say. She quickly excused herself, her heart racing as she returned to her quarters. Days turned into weeks, and the closeness between Amma and Daniel became impossible to ignore. He began calling her to accompany him during late-night drives through Lagos, saying her presence calmed him. He even allowed her to sit with him during meals, though only when the two of them were alone. The mansion buzzed with gossip. Lydia's jealousy turned to open hostility. One night, she cornered Amma in the laundry room. You think you've won, don't you? She spat. You think he'll choose you over women like Victoria? You're nothing but a charity case. Amma clenched her fists but held her tongue. She refused to let Lydia's words break her. But the real storm came during Bologna Food's annual gala. Daniel insisted that Amma attend, not as a maid, but as his guest. Mrs. Thompson helped her find a simple but elegant dress, and when she entered the ballroom, heads turned. The poor maid had transformed into a vision that even the wealthiest socialites couldn't ignore. Whispers filled the hall. Victoria, dressed in a glittering red gown, nearly choked on her champagne when she saw Amma beside Daniel. She stormed over, her smile tight with venom. Daniel, she purred, you've brought unusual company tonight. Daniel's arm tightened protectively around Amma's waist. This is Amma Johnson, the woman who saved my life. Amma's cheeks flushed, but she stood tall under Victoria's piercing gaze. Well, Victoria said smoothly, her eyes narrowing. I suppose even kings need their saviors. The tension crackled like fire. Throughout the night, Daniel barely left Amma's side, introducing her to people she never dreamed she would meet. Yet, behind the smiles and small talk, Amma could feel the daggers of envy pointed her way. Later that night, as she stepped out onto the balcony for air, Victoria followed. Her voice dripped with poison. Enjoy this while it lasts, little maid. Because men like Daniel don't marry girls like you. You'll be discarded soon enough, just like a worn rag. Amma's chest tightened, but she refused to cry in front of her. If that happens, at least I'll know I saved his life. That's more than you can say. Victoria's face hardened. You'll regret crossing me. Inside, Daniel noticed Amma's absence and went searching for her. When he found her on the balcony, shivering under Victoria's glare, his protective instincts surged. He stepped forward, slipping an arm around Amma. Is there a problem here? He asked coolly. Victoria forced a smile. Not at all. Just a friendly chat. Daniel's gaze lingered on her, cold and unyielding, before turning to Amma. Come with me. He led her away, his hand firm on her back. Once they were alone, he turned to her. You don't have to face them alone, Amma. Not Victoria, not anyone. Amma looked up at him, her heart pounding. The way he was staring at her, intense, unguarded, made her forget where she was. For a split second, she thought he might kiss her, but he pulled back at the last moment, running a hand through his hair as if fighting himself. I should take you home, he muttered. The car ride back to the mansion was silent, but charged. Amma sat beside him, her mind spinning. She knew she was stepping into dangerous territory. Falling for a man like Daniel King was madness. But her heart was no longer listening to reason. What she didn't know was that outside forces were already plotting her downfall. Victoria and Richard had joined hands in secret. Their plan was simple: expose Amma as a fraud and use the scandal to push Daniel out of power. And Amma, unaware of the storm gathering around her, was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The days after the gala were uneasy. Amma could feel the shift in the mansion. The staff whispered more than ever, and Daniel grew more guarded, though his eyes often softened when they rested on her. She tried to focus on her duties, but her heart betrayed her with every stolen glance, every accidental brush of his hand. Late one night, Amma heard voices while passing the study. She paused, realizing Daniel was inside, speaking with his lawyer. "They're trying to push me out." Daniel's voice was sharp, low with anger. "Richard and Victoria have been buying shares under shell companies. If I lose controlling interest, Bologna Foods will no longer be mine." Amma froze. Richard and Victoria. Her suspicions had been right all along. The next morning, Richard cornered her in the hallway. His smile was slick, his words dripping like poison. "You've done well, Amma." "Very well. Daniel thinks you're his savior, but you and I both know this is temporary. If you're smart, you'll walk away now. Take a little money, disappear, and leave the real game to the players who belong here." Amma's stomach churned. "I'm not here for your money. I'm here because I work here." Richard chuckled darkly. "Then you'll burn with him when he falls." Amma tried to brush it off, but that evening, she overheard Lydia gossiping in the kitchen. "They say Amma is using charm to control Mr. King. That's why he favors her. Soon, the whole mansion will be laughing when she's thrown out." Amma's hands trembled as she washed dishes, but she said nothing. She couldn't let fear destroy her. Daniel noticed her quietness that night. He called her into his study, where he sat behind his desk, tie loosened, exhaustion etched into his face. "You're troubled," he said softly. Amma hesitated. Then the words spilled out. "They're trying to destroy you. Richard and Victoria. I overheard them." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I suspected as much." "You can't trust them," she said. "They'll use anything against you. Even me." His eyes softened and he stood, walking toward her. "Amma, from the moment you saved my life, I knew you were different. Do you think I care what they say about us? Let them talk. Let them scheme. They'll never know what it means to have someone who truly cares." Her breath caught as he reached out, brushing a stray curl from her face. For a moment, the world stood still. His gaze burned into hers, and she felt her knees weaken. But before either could move closer, a knock shattered the silence. It was Mrs. Thompson. "Sir, the board meeting tomorrow has been confirmed." Daniel stepped back quickly, clearing his throat. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson." Amma excused herself, her heart racing. The feelings between them were becoming impossible to deny. The next day was the fateful board meeting. Daniel dressed in a sharp navy suit, his expression steeled for battle. He asked Amma to accompany him, not into the boardroom, but to wait outside. As the meeting dragged on, raised voices echoed through the doors. Amma paced nervously until the doors finally opened. Richard stormed out, his face twisted with fury. Victoria followed, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. Daniel emerged last, calm but grim. When he saw Amma, his features softened just a fraction. "Come," he said simply. In the car ride back, he explained. "They tried to push a vote to strip me of control. It failed for now. But they won't stop. They'll come harder next time." Amma's chest tightened. "What will you do?" "Fight," he said firmly. Then he glanced at her, a shadow of a smile touching his lips. "And I'll need you by my side." That night, Amma sat by her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Her feelings for Daniel terrified her. He was powerful, untouchable, and she was just a maid. But every look, every word, told her he saw her differently. The storm hit 2 nights later. Amma was walking back from the staff quarters when a black SUV screeched to a halt beside her. Rough hands grabbed her, pulling her inside. She screamed, but the sound was muffled as a cloth was pressed over her mouth. Darkness swallowed her. When she woke, she was tied to a chair in a dimly lit warehouse. Richard stood before her, his smile cold. Victoria sat elegantly on a crate, her arms crossed. "You should have taken my offer," Richard said smoothly. "Now you'll serve a different purpose." Amma glared at him. "You won't get away with this." Victoria's laugh was sharp. "My dear, you're nothing. When the world learns the maid was blackmailing Daniel King, his reputation will shatter. And you? Well, you'll simply disappear." Amma's heart pounded. They had already planted lies, she realized. The scandal would ruin Daniel and erase her. But Amma was not as weak as they thought. While they gloated, she worked the ropes against the jagged edge of the chair. It cut into her wrists, painful but effective. Just as Richard stepped closer, the ropes snapped loose. Amma surged to her feet, shoving him backward. Chaos erupted. She bolted for the door, her lungs burning as she ran into the night. Behind her, Victoria screamed, "Catch her!" Amma stumbled onto a deserted road, headlights suddenly blinding her. A sleek black car screeched to a halt. Daniel jumped out, his face pale with fear. "Amma!" he shouted, rushing to her. She collapsed into his arms, trembling. It was them, Richard and Victoria. They wanted to destroy you. His jaw clenched, fury burning in his eyes. Not anymore. With his security team, Daniel launched a counterattack. Evidence was gathered, exposing Richard's illegal dealings and Victoria's schemes. Within weeks, Richard was stripped of his position, and Victoria's reputation crumbled under the weight of scandal. Through it all, Daniel never left Amma's side. He visited her in her small quarters, sat with her when nightmares woke her, and listened as she spoke of her dreams to finish school and help her family. One evening, as the sun set over Lagos, Daniel took her to the balcony of the mansion. The air was warm, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. He turned to her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "Amma," he said quietly, "you saved my life twice. Once with your courage and once with your heart." Her breath caught. "Sir, Daniel," he corrected gently. "Call me Daniel." She smiled faintly. "Daniel." He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "I don't care what the world says. I don't care about their whispers. All I know is that I can't imagine this house, this life, without you in it." Amma's heart raced. For a moment, she was afraid to believe him. But his eyes told her it was real. Slowly, he leaned closer, pausing as if giving her a choice. She didn't pull away. Their lips met, soft and lingering, a kiss that spoke of everything they had survived, everything they would face together. When they pulled apart, Amma's cheeks flushed, but her smile was radiant. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I'm just a maid." Daniel cupped her face gently. "You're not just anything. You're Amma Johnson. And from today, you're mine." The world outside continued to chatter, to judge, to whisper. But within the walls of Daniel King's mansion, a new story had begun, not of scandal, but of love that defied every expectation. And for Amma, the poor maid who once dreamed of something more, Her life had transformed forever.